Streaming, streaming, streaming away.
Streaming, streaming, streaming.
Streaming away.
Are we on? Yes.
We are
Evolutionary.
on Evolutionary, guys.
We are on Evolutionary. Energy Arts. I know that. That's a mouthful, and it's really hard to actually remember. Because I remember I ran across your channel when you started it in 2017. This is a little known thing.
And I don't even
tell.
Hey,
Israel! Yay!
Number one again.
One. Awesomeness. Hey, Israel. Hope it's going good.
Yeah, absolutely. Hola, ¿cómo está? ¿Qué
So,
pasa?
yeah, a little known thing. Hi, Jason, Robbie, and people are pouring in. Hi, guys.
Yes.
Andy Strings.
Inspire me, DJ.
But I heard your voice the first time, and I'm like, I really like that voice. But then I couldn't remember your channel.
Oh, wow.
Because I had to go back and I had to find you, and it was Evolutionary Energy Arts, which is a great name, but I couldn't remember it.
Yeah, again, the channel was started because I was just going to post things about energy work for clientele after I had moved away from where I was living. And I just wanted to have a way to keep in touch with people, my regular clients. I didn't want to have them feel like I was abandoning them.
You were at the time teaching?
At the time I was, well, yeah, I was teaching energy work. I was being an energy worker, so I was very busy with all sorts of clientele on a regular basis, and teaching a lot of them that wanted to learn energy work on the side as well, and teaching classes Wednesdays and Saturdays. So that's really what this started with. And you know, that group that starts with an I, ends with an I, came knocking, trying to recruit me, and I said no, and then weird things started to happen.
Yep.
And you know, all of a sudden, next thing you know, I'm talking about CONS piracy theories.
And you're just crazy, like all of us, like the rest of us.
Yes.
Like Noel and Emperor Rex, great to see you. And DJ and Israel says, each day better than the last, but not as good as tomorrow will be. Oh, I love it. Gives me chills, Israel.
Greetings over in the UK. Yeah, greetings everybody. And what's up? Well, lots of stuff going on. It's just, you know, it's so weird out there. We talked about, and did you guys see the White House, you know, situation? And I think it's symbolic of where we are in our discussion today. What does the current White House remodel have to do with Atlantis? I think everything. I really do. What do you think?
Well, it's definitely not what he says it is. I mean, that's just, oh, I'm just going to make it a ballroom. Yeah, no, it's going to be some wild 007 training ground. And I want to go dressed up as a ballroom.
Yeah, so, you know, you could see this is the part that was taken off Monday. And they are talking about, I heard, you know, removing the whole East Wing and redoing it. It looks like it could only go out to here, to the road. I don't know how big they're planning on making it, coming down into these trees or what. Who knows? But I'm sure there's a lot of symbolism behind it. I guarantee you there's a lot of symbolism.
Yeah. Yeah. And then just a lot underneath it, behind it, around it, in it. And somebody did mention the Pluto return. Yes, I bet that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, you mentioned a Pluto return. That shows that you're very awake. Yeah, everything is being redone. It's all being reborn. What's it going to look like? If we look historically, you tend to go from a democracy to a dictatorship, just looking at the history.
K-Head says the ballroom, B-A-A-L.
Yeah.
That's really good. That's good. I like it. K-Heads.
Yeah, they were spreading some ball this morning, aluminum and barium. Barium and aluminum.
Yeah, there's that.
Lots of other stuff probably too up in those chemtrails.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so the government shut down. Yeah, sure. You know, there's a government above the government. This government is for public consumption. It's all a show. We kind of get that. Yet at the same time, there's so much more. There is so much more going on.
Yes, there is. And hello, Clinton. I just don't want to miss anybody. McGusson, Jen and John, great to see you. Robbie, Mark Smith, Christine, great to see you. Maggie's daddy, good to see Horatio, good to see you. Andy Strings, thanks, you guys. And Jason, thank you, thank you.
We're going to talk about, again, Atlantis. And, the whole concept here is, if you live in North America, are you living in Atlantis? Are you? Again, what we have gotten was Atlantis was a global civilization. That's how the guides described it. There's the Reichstag spherical thing over there in Africa. And, people have said, I think it was Jimmy Corsetti made a video like maybe 5 years ago, it was super big, saying Atlantis found, look at the Reichstag. Whatever it is, what is it really? Was it some sort of technology? Was it a city, buried under whatever it was that, again, wiped out so much of northern Africa, northern and central Africa? We've talked about the different maps. Plato says, Atlantis lied, beyond west of this area. This is the Pillars of Hercules, the closest point between Spain and Africa. Well, Atlantis was somewhere out in the Atlantic Ocean. And then we have America and the Americas. We do know that certain lands have gone underwater. We do know there were big impacts in the past. And, again, what Plato got was secondhand information. Again, it was something that was told to him by somebody that it was told to, that remembered the old stories. This is how it all is. And yet we have a system that's always trying to hide all the truth from us. And how many of the myths and legends contain the real truth, and how many of them have been altered by the very system that looks to keep us in the dark? Good morning, Susan Donahue. Good morning, Diana. Good morning, Oneness. The Recalcitrant, great to see you all, Oneness. So wonderful to see everybody there. It's fascinating, and yet Atlantis was just one stage of civilization on Earth. Before Atlantis, we had Mu and Lemuria, very, very different civilizations. Here's a map, again, Atlantean continent during the Ice Age. Now, this map has Atlantis totally connecting Europe and North America. Could it be that such devastation was wrecked that much land went underwater? When you look to, and again, we look to Google Earth, things like that, and can we really trust it? I mean, we've found a lot of artifacts. I'm not talking about me and Cindy. We have found some, Cindy and I, but many other people have found many, many other artifacts and strange things at the bottom of the ocean. We recognize you have this Atlantic ridge, which is expanding. So, as the plate motion goes and the growth, where's the growth on planet Earth? It's right here in the Atlantic ridge. It's expanding. So, North and South America are being pushed farther and farther apart from Africa, from Eurasia. So if we go back in time, this was closer to that. But how about 10, 12,000 years ago, Younger Dryas period? How much closer? Negligible is what scientists would tell you. They might tell you 6 inches, a foot. Not much of a big deal. But is that really the case? Because a lot of things we know feel very, very off when it comes to, dating and dating techniques. You can see right here, if we just look at how shallow certain areas are, when we get back to having a full-fledged ice age, all this, which is submerged, will be above water. And as you can see, Ireland and the UK here, England, Scotland, they were all one landmass with all of Europe. In fact, again, you could see you would be able to walk all the way across all this when we had the full glaciation ongoing. And yeah, there's lots of tales of when this land went under. Yeah, it how fast does the world change? That's the question. I think it's way faster than people think. In fact, again, we look at all this. So, was all this at some point in the not too distant future all a landmass above ground, above the water, I should say. And again, that would make for almost a pretty easy, migratory path over into the Americas. When you look again to Florida, we've talked about that before. You could see when we have full glaciation, Florida was, 4 times as wide as it is now, at least. And the reality is, the Gulf of Mexico was a lake. So, things can change. Things can change. And I think they could change a lot more drastically, a lot more quickly than what history will tell us. I think they want to give us the illusion that things move very, very slowly as opposed to very fast. And here you go, Atlan. Wow, right there, Atlan, over the United States. Wow. So yeah, as it turns out, there's quite a few maps that literally show. How about this one? The United States of Atlantis in 1809, the War of Independence and the War of 1809-1811. Whoa, what's going on? Is our history completely crazy? Or are people just inserting fun things in the timeline? It's pretty well. I love old maps too, Robbie. I think they're just so much fun. Yeah, the Sahara, as Susan was saying, went from very lush to desert very quickly. Absolutely, because when we look at the Sahara, there's quite a few maps that show it having lakes, rivers, being lush, showing fortresses and cities where there's nothing but sand right now. This is the reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I look at things and I wonder, how many times have they rewritten things? And I don't know if they are putting AI just on random things and throwing it out there. I really don't know. But you know what? If you look back at everything, is it all just how much of it's made up? Now, looking at the deserts, no, I don't think they're natural either, Susan. They've been able to make themselves functional and very beautiful. But that, to me, when I walk on desert land, it feels scarred. It really does.
Yeah, I would say deserts are the result of war in most cases. And whether it's, wars directly between opposing forces, wars truly against humanity, wars against the planet, it's the result of war. And when we look at these areas, yeah, I think they've been scorched. What Cindy has gotten in channeled information is when we look to the west of the United States, so much of that area was stripped of its topsoil, literally washed away. Again, intentionally by a system that needed to make the planet more inhospitable in order to control the resources. This is what they don't want you knowing. And here we watch the politicians still talk about things like now, some of the hot topics, they're talking about AI, no jobs for anybody. What are we going to do? And, there was a politician there that said, what will people do without having work? There'll be no point in their lives. It's like, wait a minute. Where the hell is your head? I mean, that's a slaver's mentality. We could be creative. We could make new things. We could actually do what we want to do without having this system in place. What about, if we worked together instead of worked against each other in order to have such a superabundance of food and of everything? We could. There were tribes that would, when a couple got married, what would they do? They would set them up in a house. The whole tribe would come together and build them a home for the newlywed couple as a gift. No profit involved, just out of the goodness of their heart, setting up a family to succeed and becoming a family. Where is that in this world? It doesn't exist in this world because this world's run by greedy beings that are all about power, ego, and control.
Yeah. I think at this point, too, with those tribes, with what they're doing, they learned from generations of major loss that you have to come together. So unless people are experiencing pain and loss and despair, it's like they don't want to come together because they're comfortable being self-sufficient. And I get it. I love my home. I love my property. I love my pups. I love my privacy. But until something changes, people don't change the way they're living.
Look at this one, too. I mean, this one has Atlantis right across North America. Wow, that's just pretty wild, These ones, some of these are from pre-1700. It's really wild to see. So there must be some sort of connection. Some sort of connection with Atlantis and the Americas. Atlanticum Pelagus. Yeah, it's pretty wild. So, if there was an abundance of maps out there showing quite clearly Atlantis at least being named in North America, it would make a lot of sense. Well, we talk about, again, when did people really get to the Americas? Science will tell us they crossed the land bridge when it was there, when there was an ice bridge up there. They came over from the Eurasian continent. And really, you could trace a lot of the natives down to just a couple of haplogroups, which trace back to really around Mongolia. But that's not everybody. That is not everybody. And in fact, again, when we look to the accounts, thousands of accounts of giant bodies being discovered, of many beings looking very, very Caucasian. I think, again, you'll have science want to apparently grudgingly admit that Europeans, Vikings, could have came over and, actually intermingled and settled with, again, the ones that came over the Bering Land Bridge 12,000 years ago, what have you, from Mongolia, interacting with and mingling with them. But it's bigger than that. Again, there are accounts of very European, very Nordic looking beings down in South America. And at some point, I really hope to take Cindy on a good exploration of Peru and Bolivia and some of the other areas in South America as part of our bucket list. And it's interesting, too, when you look at those conical heads that are a distinct type of humanoid being that we see in the Paracas area in Peru. We see the same haplogroup, and again, that's DNA. We see the same DNA group over in the Black Sea area. How is that connection possible? And if it was a case of migration, why don't we see it, like along the whole migratory path? We don't see that in, say, Spain. We don't see that over here in Africa. We see it in the Black Sea. We see it over in Peru, and nowhere really in between. How did they get from living around Ukraine, Kiev, right, to living over in Peru? Unless they're traveling in the air. Otherwise, wouldn't you expect to see traces of that DNA all along the migratory path? Yeah, again, we had much higher technology in the past than we're even allowed to know about today.
Oh, yeah. And it's, I think it all really still kind of lies under the Vatican. I think the Vatican knows the technology that's out there. And lately they've been pulling up AI and a lot of things. And, I think it's just going to lead to another destruction. It can't be a good thing. I've been poking around looking at these data centers that are going up, and they all are hiding behind laws so that they don't have to answer questions when one shows up in your neighborhood. So it doesn't seem very fair. They're consuming so much water, so much power, and there's something wrong with it. And when people try to argue, well, they're bringing in workforce, but for the amount of resources these data centers are pulling in, 100 workers just is not enough to justify that, when one data center for just, a small amount of time consumes enough power and water for, 200 people, within a very small amount of time. So I don't know. I kind of feel like these data centers are something bad.
Yes, absolutely. Robbie mentions Atlanta, Georgia. Yeah, how about Memphis, Tennessee? Again, we look at names like Memphis and Atlanta, and we think that, it's coming from the old world. But this is the old world. This is the old world, which was transplanted on to what we think was the old world, and then brought back here, if you follow my line of thinking. When we look to Egypt, what was up with Egypt? Again, when you look to the pyramids and stuff, there's a Syrian connection, Sirius, and the beings from Sirius. Again, when we look to that, then we're really talking again about the founding of Atlantis, the fact that it was a civilization in which ETs and people that had been here a long time, because ultimately we're all ETs really when you get down to it, we're intermingling all the time. And, again, this is part of that realization that is something that we have to work on. When you look to, you could look to the Mormons and the Mormon legends, and you could look to, some people believe, that the 12 tribes of Israel migrated this way. Again, look beyond all that. I was talking in a different chat yesterday night, again, pointing out how when we look to Abraham and Sarah, that's really based on Brahma and Sarasvati. When you look to Israel, you could break that down to Is for Isis, Ra, the sun god, El, the Canaanite storm god. What we have today in our mainstream beliefs, history, religion, they're all amalgamations. They're all basically consolidated revisions of what went before. And it'll resonate with people to a degree because it feels familiar, but there is a twisting, a distortion there. Oh yeah, and now is the time where it all gets basically revealed. We've talked about this many times too, and you see California as an island. Again, so many of the pre-1700 maps show California as an island. And, literally, you can see the Gulf of California and the Red Sea. The Red Sea. Wait a minute, the Red Sea is over in the biblical lands, but maybe this is the real biblical lands. Again, as we've talked about the wandering in the desert, well, maybe that's, again, allegory. Literally, the system came from Mars. So the system, the control system that we have here that ruined Atlantis, brought down Mars. And they're trying to do it to us again today in this, modern Atlantis that we find ourselves living in.
When Mike's talking about the biblical aspect of it, I really believe that there is that form of ancient AI, coming full circle, feeding into this AI. And a lot of people, they're definitely concerned about the data centers. And Noel says they're building a massive data center near me. Yeah, there's people that are really fighting this. And I mean, I think this is just part of the cycle, from Atlantis. And we're going back in that cycle. It's very problematic because the noise, the hum that's in the area is very disruptive to the energy body. People are trying to fight it by filing complaints, but somebody put in a law that, oh no, they're functioning well within the limits of sound. But it's not just the sound, it's what it's doing to the energy body. And this leads us right back to Atlantis. So it makes sense. America, being Atlantis, that they would just start to do this all over again using the data that they had before, this other issue came up and technology destroyed them this last time. So, slow learners, I think they're just going to plow us into the ground again, so it's up to us to get self-sufficient.
It's waking up as many people as possible. North America, particularly the United States, features numerous towns and cities named after biblical places and figures. Well, you could say simply, they brought their Christianity, they brought their biblical familiarity with them to the United States. But was it that, again, some of that was already in place here, not from a biblical lens, but a pre-biblical lens. Yeah, that's again part of the bigger reality. Was the Revolutionary War what we are told? Was the Civil War what we are told? The reality is, again, there's tons of great channels that have done fabulous jobs. I really, truly love some of the guys that are out there that are half my age and have done a lot of the same research that I've been spending my life uncovering and also getting from the guides with Cindy, that understands, again, it's a loop. It is a loop. There is truth. Again, there's truth in the Bible. There's truth in these old tales, but not at a historical verbatim level. You have to realize there's allegory. Again, the 12 apostles, the 12 tribes of Israel is simply talking about the zodiac in many ways. It's talking about the 12 constellations, the 7 churches, the 7 lights, lampstands. Again, that's reference to the 7 chakras. When you're talking about Christ, it literally means anointing. And again, in the Catholic Church, you get the little oil right on your third eye. Why are they sealing your third eye? Well, we know why. Again, it's an anointing that comes it awakens the pineal gland, which is awakening in a lot of people right now. A lot of people are waking up. They're becoming more aware of their abilities that have been dormant. So we're going to just kind of know. We're going to feel. We're going to go and look at a map like this and say, oh, well, that's before California rammed into the rest of North America. And yeah, that was about 325 years ago. And that is also why we have so many quakes. The greatest number of quakes in the world happens, in my mind, it's happening along the newest impact zone, which is right here. It's right here. And this is going off on a little tangent, but this gives you an idea of how things can change. Okay, so look, San Francisco is right here. San Francisco is east of this red line, but Los Angeles is west of that red line. What is this red line? It's a plate boundary. And scientists will tell you that someday Los Angeles might be farther north than San Francisco. Have you ever heard that, guys? I'm sure some of you have. That's because this is on one plate, that was on another plate, they impacted, and then it can slip. And really, seriously, when the big one comes, Los Angeles might find itself a lot closer to San Francisco when all things are said and done. Mm-hmm. And how quickly can that happen? We tried to make a go of it as we were wanting to stay close to family. We bought a little 1-acre lot in Amargosa in the desert here. And, I am kind of partial to Amargosa. I like the vibes there. And we would go shopping down in Pahrump. This is where Art Bell lived. Art Bell lived down here. We would come around this corner all the time. And I would look out. What would I see? I'd have visions of an inland sea here. And it was as real as, it's some of the most real visions I've had. We, in our little lot, which was, up in here, we found clamshells, fossilized clamshells. We found coral. We found a giant's tooth, and other stuff that there's no way that came from 30, 10, 20, 30,000 years ago or millions of years ago. Oh, no, no, not at all. 300 years ago, okay. I would venture to say that's possible. So I do think that this was all underwater. Death Valley is very, very low. Death Valley wasn't ocean bottom. I mean, it was the bottom of a sea. And it might be the bottom of a sea in the very near future yet again. I think things can change much faster than they tell us. Much, much faster. Thank you, Brother Robbie.
Thank you so much, Robbie.
Yeah, we love you and appreciate you, Robbie. So, yeah, when you look at this, I think truly California was an island. And there's even accounts of some of the earliest explorers. I At one time I was like trying to gobble up all the books I could get on the whatever leftover writings we had of the earliest explorers, mostly from the 1500 to 1600 period, coming into North America from Portugal, from Spain, France, Netherlands, again, the Dutch, the English. And what did they find with the peoples of the Americas? They found not what we're told today. They didn't find a very homogeneous grouping of everybody that was quote unquote a red man, so to speak. If you want to use that terminology, no offense to anybody. Cindy and I both have Native American roots. My dad was technically about a third Native American, and Cindy, her dad as well. So, what does that really mean? Because they had accounts of people that looked, and they're described as, well, these people look like the tribes we saw in Ethiopia. Where? In the Carolinas and in Maine. Like, wait a minute, they look like the people from Ethiopia. How about the Olmecs? You look to the Olmecs, right? The Olmecs, again, they're very interesting. They're one of the first ones that came over here. And when you look to their features, and it looks like they want to change their features when I'm looking it up, you could see here. The Olmecs, they're Polynesian. So they came from Polynesia. Again, how could they I mean, are you telling me they island hop all the way from here to here? Maybe, but maybe there was a lot more land too. Because if we go back to, again, the theory that we gained 400 feet of ocean when we had the cataclysm of the Younger Dryas event, because you look at these shallow areas, you could see New Zealand was a continent. This was a continent, guys. Look at the size of this. It was way bigger than it is now. And in fact, yeah, you might have to take a boat across a little expanse here, but then you could walk all the way, and these islands connected all the way up to Fiji, as you can see. So, yeah, perhaps it was easier to transverse. If all this was above, above sea level, then perhaps, yeah. But the other thing is, maybe we actually hitched rides with ETs, that were coming and going all the time. Thank you, Clinton. Thank you so much for your support.
Yes, thank you, Clinton.
Yeah, Grouchy's talking about hello Cabbage Patch dolls because there's been numerous genetic experiments done to make the perfect slave species. But again, they took what was here, they merged it with their own DNA, and they created new species. Again, what we've gotten is that when you look to... Oh, thank you again,
Thank
Clinton.
you again, Clinton. Thank you.
We appreciate you guys and all you do for us, because, yeah, the Olmecs definitely are interesting. And K-Head says, were slaves really brought on ships? Yeah, we were having this discussion again with another family member, and it was a very touchy discussion that I hesitate to talk about. There is an intergalactic slave trade, and when you look at the total number of people that go missing every year in the world, it's enormous, and some of them are brought off planet. They don't want people to know that, but again, we've all heard of the deal between the former president of the United States with the Greys, and some people would be allowed to be taken, as part of the deal for more weapons, that whole thing. Again, the interaction between the militaries of the world and, ultra terrestrials, I like that term best. And I hope others will end up embracing it more, because we are talking about extraterrestrial, extra dimensional, inner earth beings that live under the sea as well. It's all of the above what we have going on. And they do keep us divided on what I view are more trivial things. Like, again, the flat earth, and you can't get through the dome, it's impenetrable. But again, look at cells. Are they impenetrable? No, but because you could get you could get stuck with something and it's going to penetrate, right? Yeah, absolutely. Yet we are in a biosphere that is built to keep out certain contaminants, but there is interaction, and there's interstitial fluid, and there's intracellular fluid, as above, so below, as within, so without. But when we look to our history, it's not what we're told at all, man. Again, there's a huge list of great channels that are doing so much good work. We've mentioned Jared Boosters, Lucius Aurelian, John Levy, but there's so many others. Autodidactic, I think, dialectic. I forget what he's been around. I think longer than I've been around on YouTube, and has gone through the same censorship as well. There's so many people that are doing great work exposing all this. And so for the system, the internet itself is a double-edged sword. They have us hooked. We're hooked. We're so used to having instant answers, which as a kid growing up, I didn't have instant answers. This is why we always had a library at home. And granted, we were never well off enough to actually own a house. We still had a ton of books, and we still were always communing with nature. So, yeah, when you look to this is an article, America is the Old World. This person has a lot of work they've done talking about Atlantis, the origin of the ancient Egyptian civilization. Yeah, because, again, I do think it makes perfect sense when you look at the catastrophe of the Younger Dryas period, and the fact that the survivors would have not been in the Americas. The Americas would have had probably the most damage, the most lives lost. And I think we did. So was it totally depopulated? No. It wasn't totally depopulated. In fact, when you look to the ancient Native American myths and legends, they talk about coming up, they talk about being brought into the inner earth by the ant people, non-human, right? And when everything had calmed down, they were brought back up and out. And where was that? Well, the originating point is the Grand Canyon. So there was, and it's not the only point, but yes, there was a huge amount of survivors in the Grand Canyon that were taken in. And then they branched out from here and went all the way back to different areas. There were other areas that had survivors. When you look to Ridgecrest, we have all these bases over here, as you could see. Yeah, there you go. Again, here's Death Valley. There's an inner earth entrance point here. There are literally tunnels that connect the Grand Canyon with this area here as well. But this is where many of the indigenous people survived the cataclysm of the Younger Dryas and then came back out. And what is the Younger Dryas cataclysm? I do think it was the destruction of Atlantis. What's your feeling, Sweet?
Well, I think it all kind of ties together, and it goes cyclical with the ages. And we're coming into a Bronze Age, and I think things are fixing to get, kind of in that cycle where things are going to have to be destroyed. But How long is that going to be? I don't know. How long is it going to be before people realize these data centers are chewing up resources that we need to actually live and breathe? Or are they putting the data centers in because they know that there's going to be a mass die-off, and that's where technology is going to bite us this time, because it's happened before.
Yeah, yeah. We still have to watch that show Moonfall. We got to remember to watch it. Yeah, Michelle Gibson's done good work as well. So many people. Thank you, Clinton. Yeah, we
Thank you,
love to
Clinton.
wake up people, and you know, this is what the guides have told us. They've told us that the numbers that we see on YouTube are not accurate, that you're actually reaching tenfold easily, and then it branches out. So it feels good to know that we're helping others understand. Now, we've found really unusual things in this area. So, you know, again, we spent a long time living right next to what was Nellis, and now it's Creech Air Force Base. And we could tell you there's stuff around this perimeter that does not make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. And in fact, I could tell, and we also found down here, right at the border of New Mexico, maybe next time we're through there, we'll look again. In this area too, there's definitely leftover evidence of giants. There's a lot of mud flood type of leftover phenomena there. You could see it. This is a very interesting area as well, along I-10 there. I remember Cindy and I were out exploring through here. Very cool. Very, very feeling of the giants. I don't know how else to describe it. But we've had those feelings in other places too, and we've seen a lot of anomalous artifacts. I think, again, when we're talking about giants, there's many different giants. Yes, some were pretty nasty, pretty aggressive, pretty hungry. Fee, fi, fo, fum. Other ones are very benevolent. And so it's just like classifying all humans as being something. You know, we can't classify all giants as being something. And again, we interacted with them. We interacted with them all the time. Man, this person did do a lot of good research, you know, because when you look deep into this, what we think of as origins of different races is not accurate either, because that's representative of different galactic heritages. And we're all mutts. There's not a single person on the planet that's not a mixture of more than one thing. And especially Homo sapiens sapiens, we might be the biggest mutts that there is in the universe. At least in our section of the universe. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, no. I mean, unicorn purple, that's so true. Two paths: trusting your natural DNA for evolution to your God selves, or trying the unnatural, mentioned via AI, which seeks to cut you off from your consciousness to control you. I agree. We definitely have to choose which path we're going to go down, and I think it's just going to become clearer and clearer. And if you don't make a decision early on, I really feel a lot of people might be caught in that net.
Yeah, Regina says autodidactic on YouTube has great Chartarian info. He's a good guy. I mean, I would like to do something with him at some time. There's a bunch of them out there I would love to interact with, and you know, do a few shows with. You know, especially some of the ones that have gone through the censorship we have. And what else was I looking? Yeah, from the digital ID to transhumanism. Yeah, because again, ultimately, how could they could control the source spark? That's the key. How do you control the source spark that is so powerful? Well, you know, if they could get it somehow merged into a machine that could, you know, live indefinitely, that's, I think, one thing that they're trying.
Well, I think you have to get people to make decisions on their own, but how those people are forced to make decisions on their own is, that's on them. We all have choices. We can choose our suck. And right now we have a lot of flexibility, but I think they're just narrowing our choices down, down, and down using AI. So there you go. They're controlling source spark because we allowed it.
Yeah, Granada Nova et California. Yeah, and the thing too that we see is with a lot of these old maps, there's cities all over the place, cities that aren't even in populated at all anymore throughout certain areas of what is now desert. Here is another one, and you can see the island of California. And then you got to wonder, okay, so what are you telling me? Is this right here what we take to be the state of Washington or Vancouver? 325, 26 years ago? Maybe. Yeah, maybe. And if it could change that much in that short time, what could be the changes over the next, say, 100 years?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think things definitely change a lot faster than they tell us.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think so. I think it's absolutely fascinating to deep dive into that. Here's another one again. And for some reason, they do have this separated, differently. Of course, it looks like there's big chunks of Canada missing here, but it's showing America over here. North Sea, Mar del Norte. So the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis proposes that a fragmented comet or asteroid struck the Earth around 12,800 years ago. So isn't it interesting that we have all these comets, like 17 comets by April? And of course, the number one comet that most people are focused in on is 3I Atlas, which just happens to be named like Third Eye at last, or Atlas, Atlan,
or is Atlas like the mouth of God?
Atlantis, Third Eye Atlantis.
That's the Atlas, right?
Yeah,
the body Atlas.
Atlas, yeah. Well, the Atlas is again C1. So when you're talking about your head and turning your head, your skull is basically mounted such that it turns on its atlas. You have C1 and C2.
And then I heard it was called the mouth of God. Is that what it's called?
There's there is a acupuncture point back there as well. So yeah, it's just fascinating how things are reflected in many different ways. But when you think about that, Third Eye Atlas, is it having to do with the awakening of the third eye and the rebirth of Atlantis?
Well, I certainly see a lot of people going through a lot of changes, and it's been very difficult, especially through that full moon in Aries was the worst I've felt in a long time, and other people too, going through so many challenges yet making breakthroughs left and right. So yeah, I think it is bringing an awakening, because when you now see things, and a lot of things that we see now are, we're realizing, hey, that's not working. And when you realize that something is not working, well, you tend to want to fix it, and you tend to want to make it more streamlined and make it function. So, and sometimes that involves change, which could involve pain.
So Susan Donahue says, are we talking about a comet, an asteroid, or a weapon? Well, I think, that definitely you could use a comet, an asteroid as a weapon. We have that concept of a tractor beam. We could guide things. And then, of course, we see evidence of directed energy weapons all over the world. It's all over the world. In fact, how did the deserts get to be deserts? I think a lot of it is directed energy weapons. Look at this, again. Proponents have identified sites in North America, South America, Europe, and Western Asia, where they claim to find impact proxies like platinum, microspherules, melt glass, nanodiamonds, and shock-fractured quartz. Key locations cited includes the Great Lakes region, where the impact is theorized to have struck or exploded over the Laurentide ice sheet, and specific sites in the United States like New Jersey, Maryland, Southern Carolina. Recent studies reported the presence of platinum, microspherules, melt glass, and shock fractured quartz consistent with low altitude airbursts. We've talked about that before. When you look to modern warfare, if they were to have a nuclear war, they use a low altitude airburst to create the most damage. They explode it before it impacts. That creates the greatest damage. That's what we're seeing in this Younger Dryas extinction event. It looks to me to be an act of war. I do agree with Susan there. And additional sites reported also in Alberta, Canada, Michigan, Greenland, North Carolina, Alberta again, France, Italy even, Newtonville, Maryland, UK. Also in, again, there was a big impact site in southern Louisiana, not far from the Gulf. By the way, in case you missed it, and I think we should bring this up too, there's a pyramid that they have seen off of New Orleans. So, you know, I think when we look to Egypt and think of, you know, that Egyptian culture, what we're really seeing is an Atlantean culture. But we're also seeing that exists here. You remember the Grand Canyon, that whole thing with that finding ancient Egyptian relics. Okay, well, this is not that. There we go. 12,000 year. This is Ancient Origins talking about it. I think they do other things too. Like if we looked at what was popping up in the news, the first search was some Nicolas Cage article, you know, thing about like a little pyramid that he had built. Yeah, I think they'll feed search engines with things like that so you don't bother to keep looking. But yeah, 12,000, this is again going back to Younger Dryas period. What do we see? A lost city right off the coast. Again, Chandelier Islands, which are 50 miles east of New Orleans. They have pyramid-like structures down there. Again, too, the amount of land along the coastlines that would have been above water if this was what literally set off that melting of those sheets and gave us 400 more feet of water. You know, a lot of areas along the coastlines are hiding relics. And, you know, this is an area where these islands were probably all well above land. And so, you know, here you go. And also, it has strange electromagnetic energy. So it's, you know, they're bringing up the question, is another Bermuda Triangle? Or is there still Atlantean technology down there in Louisiana, off the coast, that is affecting electronics? You know, as he says here, according to the guy that they were interviewing for this article, the compass on his boat spun completely out of control as they neared the point where he was over the tip of the pyramid. Everything on your boat will go, all of your electronics. It's as if you're in the Bermuda Triangle. So, yeah, this is George Gelle, spent 50 years studying this site. So, yeah, you know, again, that's, again, points to the fact that maybe North America really was kind of like the center point of Atlantis and the Atlantean civilization.
You know, they're saying there's reported sonar anomalies and grid-like layouts under that water. And yeah, like you said, you know, the technology is still emanating from that. And I know by my own practice and some extremely special crystals that were gifted to me by my dearest Mama Jan, these crystals, I can tap into them and they can speak to me and they can help people. I actually, when we work on people as a team, I usually have them get their favorite crystal, and that crystal will record that whole session so that they can have the session again after, because the crystal has all the data in it. These crystals speak to other crystals, and then these people's crystals actually warm up. They get hot while we work on them. So if you were aware, so I guess what I'm getting at, if you're aware of this technology that's in the water, and it's a consciousness thing used like with crystals and sacred metals and things like that, you could still communicate with it. And then in the ether, it could perhaps help you in some ways.
So this is chandelier sound, which you can see right here. You know, we're losing so much of what we've taken back artificially from the Gulf of Mexico is being lost at a fast rate in some spots in Louisiana. Other spots are actually building up, as the Mississippi would actually seem to like to relocate itself a little bit away from where it is. But when you look at some of these areas and you wonder what's really going on, you know, like all this. What was all this? I don't know. There is some interesting stuff to be found on these Google Earth areas.
And you just need to spend the time and have the time to go through it and pick it apart.
Well, I remember finding really weird stuff down here, more towards Cuba. And I do think Cuba has had all of its issues, you know, again, geopolitically. Look at this right here. Look at this grid work. You see that? I mean, that's not natural. Look at that. That's grid work. This was like a city or something underneath the water right there.
And, you know, we see that like in the jungles too. So a lot of times they have this new it's probably old by now, technology. And they fly over and they take pictures of what's in the earth under the trees. It looks like this.
LiDAR.
LiDAR.
Yeah, LiDAR. LiDAR shows, you know, again, there were as many people in the Americas as there was in Europe when Columbus came in 1492. In fact, I think there might have been more people here than there. Because, you know, it had rebounded after the destruction. Yeah, I found some really weird things in some of these areas. Now, again, a lot of this would be probably, you know, I gotta wonder, was this some sort of boating?
Could it be an active antenna array?
Oh, that could be an antenna array. Absolutely.
Sure could.
Because we do see other ones like that.
And we do see water take on that shape sometimes. I've seen plenty of photos. Water takes on those little square shapes.
Yeah, so if you go down here, where we're talking about that other really weird little island, there's Edinburgh, it's below that. It took me a while to locate it before. But yeah, there was another, what looks to be an antenna array somewhere over in here. It might take me a bit to find it again. But, you know, they're all around the world, basically.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg. Thanks, all of you. You guys, please definitely stick around because we do a nice tuning at the end. And it's very, very healing. And it's for those of you, everybody who helps support the channel. So, and everybody in there, thanks for the thumbs up. Thanks for the tips. And we appreciate it so much.
So, you know, again, the worst of it, the worst of the Younger Dryas impact is like what you're looking at right here. So, you know, again, it's mostly affected really the North American continent, but it did hit Europe too, as well, and some random strikes in other spots. So, you know, why is there more people in Asia than in the Americas? Well, you know, again, it could be just simply because the biggest depopulation during that time was in the Americas because of this. And, you know, could it happen again? I mean, I have felt it when I was in Arizona again by that gigantic crater. That freaked me out because I was getting too many visions. Too many visions. Then we have the Freemasons. The concept of America as a new Atlantis is a recurring theme in various theories about Freemasonry's influence on the founding United States. This goes back to Sir Francis Bacon's 1627 utopian work, The New Atlantis, which envisioned a society dedicated to scientific achievement, enlightenment, and the pursuit of knowledge through institutions like Solomon's House, a research center symbolizing the idea of human progress, Proponents of the theory argue Bacon's vision directly inspired the founding of the United States as a modern realization. Was it because the United States was the head of the old Atlantis? That's why, going back to 1627, 150 years before the founding of the U.S., according to the historical timelines, why did they pick the U.S.? Why did they pick North America? Because it was the old center of Atlantis. That would make a lot of sense, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think things are coming around. I think they're right around the corner. Unicorn Purple is saying raise your frequency as high as possible by December. There could be something going on with the change in the seasons and December when we are at that low point of light in the human body. We struggle with that. We need the light. So this has got to have a natural purpose. So I think it's really important for us to always be raising our frequency, but it never hurts to do just a little extra every day.
Freemasons are often linked to this vision, and some assert the United States was established as the new Atlantis by British Freemasonry to create a society based on reason, science, and spiritual harmony. The alignment of major cities like Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York, and Boston along a 400-mile line, potentially extending to Stonehenge in London, as cited as evidence of deliberate esoteric planning. Great Seal of the United States featuring a pyramid with the Eye of Province, and Latin phrases like Novus Ordo Seclorum, New Order of the Ages, is interpreted by some as a Masonic symbol, reflecting this grand design. Historical figures associated with the founding of the U.S., like George Washington, Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, are frequently highlighted in these theories. Washington, a known Freemason, was inaugurated on a Masonic Bible with the hand placed on Genesis 49, a passage interpreted as symbolizing the blessing of the 13 colonies. They claim that at least 50 of 56 signatories on the Declaration of Independence were Freemasons. So, again, the shaping of the nation by the Masons. And is it just simply that it was situated right here because this was perhaps the center of the old Atlantis? Very, very curious.
And Christine says, I heard many years ago that a lot of Americans were also in Atlantis. I think Atlantis is global. I really do. I mean, we probably were a very strong hub of Atlantis. And I think the technology is still here. And I've always felt, people believe that maybe they're going across the world to see the most magnificent things about and mysteries about the planet, but I really think that there is a lot more here and that's been covered up than anywhere else. I just have this feeling that we are sitting on a gold mine, a landmine of information, ancient technology, ancient ways that have just simply been plowed over with mud.
So, this is talking about ancient Moors in America. And, who was here ahead of time? Again, I think all the races were already here. Did they just really bring a limited number of slaves over from Africa to here? I don't think so. I think, again, I've read accounts of, again, sailors in like the 1530s, 1520s, going along the coastline and describing who they met where. And they're along the coastlines here. And in the Carolinas, for instance, they're encountering people that, again, we would take to be typical Native Americans. But then they encounter some tribes that, again, look like they come from Sudan or Ethiopia. So obviously not. They were already here. Same thing we find all the way up in Maine and New England. So I don't think our history is telling us the true story. And then when we talked about the island of California, Queen Califia was the person in charge of that island, according to the myths and legends. They're talking about Moors. Where did the Moors come from? Morocco. So this is up in here, right? And how could they get from there to there unless it was a global society? That's the thing. Look at this, historically inaccurate, right? 1849. the Senate of California, the Great Seal of the state of California, right? And it looks like a Greek Athena. And then we see the Great Seal of the state of California, has established 1510. And, very, very dark skin, melanated. Again, I think that they use racial division as a tool. We need to look at ourselves as all being members, of the
Humanity,
race.
I know. And that always makes me think of Miss Susan Donahue. Thank you again so much for your support. We appreciate it. And, oh gosh, Lindsay, you guys, thanks. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We appreciate that. Helps us get these out and keeps us going for sure. For sure. We really appreciate it.
It's like I love and appreciate different ethnic cuisines. I mean, to me, that's one of the reasons to take a body.
That's why he cooks all different cuisines too. It's
I
great.
love to cook it. So we were doing, some Southeast Asian cooking and making a coconut peanut curry. It was delicious. I just love that. I mean, that's the spice of life, is the differences between us, which should be celebrated and enjoyed. And that's part of the big awakening.
Yes, and Christine, just to go back to that, that a lot of Americans were in Atlantis and that we came back to not make the same mistake again. That that's definitely a thing. We hopefully are going to not make the same mistakes again. And by pulling the indigenous blood into like almost everyone, I mean, I think a lot of people have just at least a little bit of indigenous blood. And I think that DNA, I believe that memory brings us closer to the earth to make better choices, better decisions, so that things don't go horribly wrong. And I do know people who remember their past lives in Atlantis, and they do remember mistakes that were made, and they were part of it, and they are remorseful, and they're very smart. They're very into programming. They are extremely smart people. So it's like, I really vibe with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Look at this representation of Queen Califia. Well, what's the root of Califia? It's Kali. Kali, so then we're taking it from supposedly an origin of the Moors in North Africa, bringing it to California, the island of California. But then the root, if it is Kali, is over in India. Well, is it just simply that we're talking about a global civilization? It was a global civilization. How about the reality of the griffins? We get that those were real entities too.
They must be related to Dobermans. They look so cool. I want 2. Give me 2.
Yeah, it is absolutely fascinating. And then, well, wait a minute, aren't griffins also associated with Tartaria? Yes, they are. So we get back to that line of thinking as well. Pretty fascinating. Look at this. This is embedded in stone, a pretty realistic representation of a 47-inch foot. Okay, wait a minute. My foot's like just about 12 inches, so that means this person would have to be proportionately like 24 feet tall.
Yeah.
That's a big giant. Now, again, there's giants and then there's giants. And then there's that which we had over on Tiamat, which was, almost beyond belief. Because, again, from our understanding, we only see about 20 to 25% of the earth that actually is. It's much bigger than what they tell us. Now, Tiamat was much bigger than the earth we have now, because we were created from the largest portion of Tiamat, which was destroyed again in the Lyran-Draco Wars. So they reclaimed the largest piece, they terraformed it, and it became our Gaia. And so, there's giants and then there's giants. But this is just super cool. Look at that encased in stone.
Speaking of dragons, there is what we strongly believe, we've done a video on it too, about it looks exactly like a dragon skull, and it feels like a dragon skull. It has a particular energy, and we're very excited to go back to see it next time. We're going to be doing a video on that, a unicorn purple. I hope you get I hope we get it out for you. We're going to try to find it again. We didn't mark the exact spot, but I have a pretty good idea of where it's at. And we just, we just have to watch out for that mine. There's mines and they just fall for hundreds of feet and you could just die. So, we got to be careful too, but darn it, that skull was amazing. I mean, wow.
We would need a flatbed and a crane to bring it back.
Yeah, a double
I'd love
flatbed.
to put it out in the yard. That would be wonderful.
That would be fun. That would be a nice rock, and we could probably pay someone, but I don't think they'd bring it as far as where we're at. Maybe locally.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, this was a real fun one. I love these type of deep dives. It's always fun when you're not focused so much in on the news, but the news reflects our past too, because there are these elements that want to just get us to replay all the downfall of Atlantis once again. But the good thing is that this time we're on the outside of the dark Kali Yuga. So Cindy's going to give you guys a ding, and we want to thank everybody that did support us. We couldn't do it without you guys.
No, we can't. And other people over on Ko-Fi too. I know Stacy's a regular that helps us out. She's a monthly person, and Israel is a monthly person, and there's others too, and we really appreciate it in the different ways you guys support us too. So I'm going to do some dings, but I want to say an extra thank you to Greg, Susan, Lindsay, Clinton, and Robbie. You guys, please, everyone, put yourself in a happy space, because it's important when we do vibrational healing, and drink lots of water afterwards. And this is a great time to manifest. So please think happy thoughts. And here we go. And one more. Hold on. Thank you so much, guys. Source bless and namaste.
Much love, guys.